I'd like to start this reflection time with something a little different. There's a book that I found at one of my study events with a Canadian writer and theologian named Rob Fennell, who lives on the East Coast. And he's written these 31 short spiritual practices. And some of these have informed how I've set up this summer camp series we're following through. And this one is one where you can bring yourself to the waterside without having to leave your pew or your seat at home. So you can get yourself comfortable and listen to this practice and see how it could serve you in your spiritual life. So imagine yourself in a body of water large enough to stretch out in, lie on your back and float. Get your balance and float for a few seconds. And steady your breathing. Stretch your arms and legs in a starfish and take a slow breath inward, bringing to mind the gift of your body and the gift of God's great love for you. From the waters of creation, we are told God called forth all life, including you. And from the waters of baptism, Jesus arose, blessing all around him. From the waters of this baptism in this moment, or in the lake, or pool, or ocean, or wherever you find yourself, you too can arise and be a blessing to others. So give thanks to God in this moment and ask for wisdom and courage to reach out to others with joy and love. So when I think about coming to the lakeshore, this ends up being a lot of what informs the trips we've taken and continue to take with our family and just the two of us in our travels. Because we're farm-based, land-based people, we typically want to get away from that when we're away, and we always end up finding ourselves somewhere near a body of water. And when the kids were younger, we took a trip to Frankenmuth, Michigan, and that was a time when all the ads on the radio were talking about pure Michigan. And so the whole time we planned the trip and we're on the trip, the boys would say, "We're in pure Michigan." So that branding worked for quite a long time. So we did a tour around parts of Michigan and found ourselves doing a loop so that one of the highways would bring us down along Lake Huron in an area we'd never seen because we normally see Huron from our side. And we thought it would be a good challenge for us to be able to enter and touch the lakes, all the Great Lakes, whenever we could get a chance. And it wouldn't be often that we would be on this side with our family. So we got ourselves to a little pull through. There's lots of little picnic areas there, and we pulled aside and we could see the lake, and we knew it was there, and we felt like it was a very steep cliff. And it seemed odd to us that there'd be this huge cliff at this place that was clearly marked for families to stop and have a break and have a picnic and do all the things. But we didn't want to miss our chance. And so we looked down and thought, wow, this is a little precarious, but we can't miss this chance. So we decided we were going to go for it. And it was sort of like a water slide with no water. So it was just a sheer cliff with lots of weeds and rocks. And we just decided, okay, we're going to go for it. So we, one by one, like otters, put ourselves down this cliff, holding on to roots and weeds on the way down, so we didn't go too quickly. And it gave us time to explore the rocky side of Huron, which is neat because we get the sandy side, play with the rocks, make some art, do our thing, get a bit wet, and do a bit of walking along the beach as we did so. And you'll never guess what we found when we finished. We'd walked a few meters to the north of where we'd landed ourselves on this big cliff that we just treacherously put our kids down, and we saw a huge staircase. A very clearly marked staircase all the way up the cliff, and all we had to do was look for the signs. Anyway, sometimes you just have to look for the sign that says stairs to beach. Anyway, now you'll know. Now you'll know. That on its own would preach, I think. But here we are on a warm day, and you know, it wasn't very many months ago we were shivering. Even indoors we were shivering, complaining of the bitter winter. And yet, in a flash, we find ourselves in the middle of another hot July. So my public service announcement to you today is get thyself to the water side. This summer won't be here forever, and neither will we. And what have I found near the water? And what could you hear with our little ones today talking about being by the water? You can't stay angry there. You might come angry, but you can't stay angry. And you find it grounding and calming and fun and cleansing and refreshing. Time by the water is good. Of course, in Genesis, we're told that God created heavens and earth and water and animals, and then humans, so we could care for this creation. And a Native American proverb says, "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, rather we are borrowing it from our children." And so through the lens of Scripture, the earth and water are not ours. And also through the eyes of Native knowledge, we also are reminded in different ways, this water is not purely ours. But how awesome, though, that we have a gift of this earth, and yet no matter how we structure it or treat it or finance it, or work with it, it's still not purely ours. It's ours to care for, and for this chapter of time that we're here. And our little interaction with it is just a moment in time in the big picture. And I know when we normally hear the passage that James read this morning from Psalm 23, we're picturing the sheep and the good shepherd. But today let's focus on the water aspects. The psalmist used the image of water to indicate God's ability to provide spiritual refreshment and restoring our souls and a sense of divine peace beyond all understanding. We hear firstly about the notion of the still waters, and then again with a cup that overflows. So there is this one aspect of this very pastoral scene of caring for the needs of a sheep. And let me tell you, sheep have a lot of needs. And then there's the banquet setting of a beautiful cup full to overflowing, abundance. And if some of us haven't often encountered a real sheep, we wouldn't automatically know the way the shepherd and the sheep would have interacted in that time in the Near East. What do we know about how they interact with water? Well, they aren't very brave, and they aren't all that clever. And maybe the fear is part of evolution, reminding them that, think about it, a big, thick coat of wool mixed with a rushing stream would be a really dangerous ending for a sheep that doesn't know how to swim. So there's a safety factor. What the psalmist also is sharing is the shepherd has a role in considering the sheep's needs and finding a way to intervene on their behalf. Out of self-protection, the sheep would be avoiding anything that seems like loud and rushing waters. So the idea here is the shepherd may have had to find a way to stop the flow, maybe still the waters to make a safe place for the sheep to have a drink. And if they were staying for a while, maybe even setting up some rocks to make a little dam so they would feel safe to approach this area to drink safely. And when you think about it, are we all that different from those sheep? Sometimes we need the loving care of a watchful shepherd like God who looks ahead and anticipates our needs and helps us find our way to the waters of rest or the peaceful place that is still enough for us to be refreshed, free from the everyday chaos and confusion of everything that life is throwing us, or maybe even sometimes a little spray bottle to smarten us up. You know, we don't just need water to survive physically, we need something that sustains us to our soul. And the shepherd image is directing us to two kinds of survival, sorting out the dry and the cracked and the desolate aspects of body and soul. And this is why the cup image reaches us so well. Because even if we can't picture ourselves as a sheep at the river's edge, we can always imagine the sights and sounds and smells of the most generous banquet table. The cup is not just for basic survival, it's abundance, overflowing with joy, forgiveness and grace, and a generous amount of spiritual refreshment. Possibly what we need most in our spiritual lives, though, is being attentive to that nudge from God, being able and prepared to giving in to our physical and spiritual needs, making ourselves available and willing to surrender to peace, and not a peace that we find by mistake. It's through a spiritual guide, one that the psalmist has painted as a shepherd who knows the path to safety and sustenance. And so to help us think about these ideas today, this is the basket I brought so many things today. I wanted to pass around some items and that would help us think about the images we're going through today. And you can just take it for a minute and then pass it to the next person. And at the end, they can just end up at the back pews. They don't have to come all the way back to the front. But there's some water for your consideration. We know water is essential for life, plants and humans, and for you in your spiritual life. But as you pass around the jar, think about how you could reduce your consumption of water, or how to share it with others, how to share that message of stewardship. Think about the gift of clean water that so few of us have in the world, and what changes we can make to advocate or financially support steps to provide clean water in communities beyond here. how we can be living water for others, and consider how each day we can be washed clean, prepared for a new start, thanks to a forgiving God. It has been said that no one steps in the same river twice, for it is never the same river, and he is not the same man. Baptisms and storms and calm shores and tears can all bring to mind these images of water. And I can't say for sure if these are from Lake Huron or New Brunswick, or I'm not sure anymore. We keep a lot of rocks in our house. But as you think about these small and sturdy stones, maybe consider what rocks tell us about the land and the life that was here before us. They hold minerals and mysteries, and they represent strength, but maybe they also represent stumbling blocks, bringing to mind the times when we stubbornly cling to an old way, and the times when we could consider a new attitude, a new response, or a different approach to our relationships with others and the world. And I know it would be so much more fun if we could just go into a sandbox, but I think that would be an outdoor service someday. There's some sand. So when you think about sand, or when you look at this funny little seagull enjoying the sand, think about these minuscule tiny grains showing evidence of years of wear and tear, but still purpose-filled. There is a ton of history in the tiniest handful: minerals, stones, weather, marine life, sometimes beautiful specks of glass. Together with wind and time, water can wear down the roughest stone into a tiny grain of sand. There is something endlessly satisfying about the feel of sand on our skin, having it shift under our feet. Kids can spend hours moving and constructing and digging in it. So why not we? And if you've ever walked along a windier shore, you're bound to have seen some of these treasures, and maybe you brought one home like I do too. Some of these were also shared. Pauline and Stephanie were able to find us some good samples too, so we appreciate that. When you're holding on to a piece of driftwood, think about the process that got it here. It was part of a tree or part of a deck, severed off through the forces of an age or storm, and broken, but still somehow so beautiful in its own crooked way. So think about the times when you've been beat up or lost, severed off from love and family and friends and purpose. But through all of it, don't we know, even through the times we don't believe or know what to believe, God's love, as big as the ocean, carries us through, whether we're ready for it or not, whether we understand it or not. Our past and our wounds and our broken pieces are part of the story too, and God knows they are part of the beauty. And I can't tell for sure if a shell can send you a message, but some people say you can listen to them. Oh, Phil's going to get a call. When you move your hands along a seashell, think about the life that was once contained in it. You can notice those ridges and smooth places, the color, the shine, the wear, how the design and weather affected this little piece of art. And think about how shells might bury their heads in the sand, but they also gather sustenance from the microorganisms of the water and the sandy earth that is their home. And think about the wonder of a child noticing for the first time that a shell can contain the echo of creation, the sound of rushing wind and water, maybe even the heartbeat of creation. Shells can be a container for magic and presence. And so, with water, I know what you're thinking. Life is busy or hot, or the beach is for kids, and you wouldn't belong. Everyone can approach the water differently, but don't put it off. If the beach intimidates you, maybe try a stream, or the nearest park, or a little splash pad, a tiny oasis in a small town with the sounds of a waterfall and the shimmer of water. Or find a local child who can bring you to a puddle. Puddles count too. If the sand and the travel is holding you back, or someone you know, many beaches now have specially designed wheel-friendly walkways, so an evening stroll might not be so far out of reach as we think. When you find yourself at the waterside, remember, it doesn't always need to be peaceful. Just like God, the water can handle whatever you've got. Angry? You can shout over the wind and waves. Pick up some stones and name them with your worries and toss them 1, 2, 3, your grief and your regrets, one by one, as far as they will go. If you're feeling overwhelmed, you can park your to-do list and your phone and your shoes and let yourself be free. Bare feet walking in the sand, waves washing you free. If you need some perspective, take a little person to the water and share their experience. A cautious toddler getting braver by digging in the sand to watch the holes fill with water, and the braver ones that need a hand or a life jacket but will toss themselves at the waves. While you're there, think about the many ways that God has been present in the water. Baptisms, Jesus with the woman at the well and stormy seas, and fishers of men. It's truly a Bible study in itself. And sometimes you have to let yourself slide down that sandy cliff without really thinking about it at all. Come to the waterside. God is waiting there for you. May it be so.